and staff. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Littleton Planning Commission for April 26, 2017. Could we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Board Member Bolt is not going to be able to make it tonight. Board Member Breidenbach.
Present.
Board Member Corbett is not here tonight. Board Member Graham.
Here.
Board Member Kruger is not here tonight. Board Member Reynolds.
Here.
Chair Rudnicki.
Here.
And Chair Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
And Board Member Schwartzbacher. Here.
We have a quorum. Approval of the agenda is next on the agenda. Is there anybody that has not looked at the agenda? Have any changes? Seeing none, let's move on. Minutes for approval. You've all had copies of the minutes or have seen the tape. Are there any changes to the minutes, or do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Need to vote, please. Okay. We have 6-0 in favor of approval of the minutes. Next on the agenda is, let me start out by saying we have two items on tonight's docket. Both of them, the Planning Commission is advisory to City Council. One is a project on Curtis Street. The other one is a change, an update to the, if I can find it here, subdivision regulations. So next on the agenda is public comment. It's the time where citizens can speak on any subject not related to any of the two agenda items. It's an opportunity for anyone to express opinions or ask questions on items that are not part of the public hearing. Immediate response should not be expected. Please sign in if you wish to speak up there. We expect comments to be civil. There's a 3-minute time limit. It's like a soccer referee. We have a yellow card and a red card. With 30 seconds left, you'll be warned with a yellow card. A red card goes up after your 3 minutes. So, do we have anybody on the list? For anybody that's not signed up, do they wish to make any comments? Seeing no rush to the rostrum, we'll go on to general business, which there is none. And briskly, we're going into public hearings.
I like the way you run the meetings.
You happy about that?
I like the way you're running the meeting.
Yes, that's right.
Going well.
You want me to do a song and a dance for a couple of minutes? First public hearing is PC Resolution 04-2017, resolution to approve a planned development overlay for 5530 South Curtis Street. You've all got your attachments via the tablet. Could we get a staff presentation, please?
Good evening, Planning Commission. Carol Kuhn, representing Planning Services. I'm here filling in for Andrea, who had a scheduling conflict. The item before you is a public hearing to consider Planning Commission Resolution 04-217. The development under consideration is the Curtis Street duplex located at 5530 South Curtis Street in the downtown neighborhood. The application is for a planned development overlay. The proposed development must receive approval on 2 planning applications before receiving a building permit. The planned development overlay, which is the subject of tonight's public hearing, and a site development plan, which is approved administratively by planning and public works staff. My presentation this evening has 4 sections. I'll discuss the applicant's proposal, then the applicant's request to seek deviation from the R5 zoning district. Following that, I'll represent the staff analysis and the application criteria for the plan development overlay, and the end of the presentation will be the staff recommendation. After my presentation, the applicant will make a presentation, and I believe William Rivera is here this evening to make a presentation, and John Matthews is also here this evening to assist with the presentation and answer any questions. The applicant proposes a residential duplex on South Curtis Street in the downtown neighborhood. The underlying zone district is R5, a residential multifamily zone district which permits townhomes on lots of 2,500 square feet or more. Under the plan development overlay, the applicant seeks relief from some of the zoning requirements in exchange for quality development. The PDO applications require that an illustrative plan be included to provide a visual for how the development may look under the terms of the approved plan. In this illustrative site plan, the outer perimeter of the site depicts the area of the current lot. The future proposed property line is depicted. The applicant has indicated a future desire to possibly subdivide the lot. That would be through a subdivision exemption or other mechanism, which is the subject of this evening's, the second public hearing tonight. The future proposed property line would allow the units to be sold separately. As you can see in the plan, the end units are oriented towards the street. The 2 units front the street. The lot line would be dividing the future lot line, so it's 2 units. It's a duplex product. The unit on the north end has a door on the front facade, and the south unit has a side entrance. Each unit has a walk connecting to the Curtis Street sidewalk. At the rear of the property, you can see a driveway off of the alley. Each unit has 2 parking spaces in the garage, and the front building setback is shown at 16 feet from the property line. On the north side, building setback is shown at 5 feet, and on the south, it's shown at 4.5 feet. This is an exhibit prepared by the applicant to provide an illustrative site plan that lays out the area of the lot where the unobstructed open space may be located. The applicant is not proposing changes to the open space requirement of 25% for the underlying zone district, which R5 specifies that a minimum of 25% open space be provided. However, in this exhibit, the open space is shown at 33.5%. I'd like to note an error in the staff report. The zoning comparison chart indicated that the applicant is proposing 33.5% open space, but the amount is 25% that they're proposing. Although they're intending to do more, they want to keep the threshold the same as in the R5 district. An email was sent to all the planning commissioners, and the staff report was amended yesterday. In this elevation of the front facade, the illustrative plan includes a craftsman-style architecture. The front porches are provided at the street level, balconies are provided at the 3rd story, and the materials are brick at the base with lap siding above. The architecture is 4-sided for the project, meaning that the craftsman-style elements are built into the design on all elevations. The side elevation for the south unit shows the side entrance and detailing consistent with the front elevation. The full plan set with all 4 elevations is provided in the packet. The plan development overlay applications are intended to provide flexibility in zoning standards. Under the R5 zoning district, the applicant proposes to reduce the front setback. As indicated in R5, the setback is 20 feet. The applicant would like to go down to the 16 feet, which is consistent with the predominant front setback for the block face. The applicant is also requesting to reduce the side setback from 10 feet to 6 feet and allow for up to an 18-inch roof overhang into the setback, which would result in a 4.5-foot side setback. The applicant is also proposing to increase the height from 30 to 31 feet. The plan development overlay application has both an intent statement and a statement on development standards. The intent statement is to provide a procedure which permits more flexible site design and development than is possible under traditional zone districts, while maintaining the land use characteristics of those districts. The development standard states the intent of a PDO is to take advantage of flexibility allowed by the PDO regulations. The proposed development must demonstrate special attention to creative, high-quality design. The applicant's proposed zoning variations are addressed in the context of these statements. The front setback. The applicant's request to reduce the front setback from 20 feet as established in the underlying R5 zone district, to 16 feet. To provide context for this request, the applicant has prepared the exhibit you see on the slide. It is a component of the PDO site plan as well. The applicant has determined that the average front setback for the block face is 15.95 feet, and that's taken from the existing structures that are on the site from one, just on that one side of the block, not both sides of the block, just a single block face. The development pattern, given the development pattern that has been established for the block, the proposed 16-foot setback appears to be consistent with the neighborhood. The side setbacks along the block face vary, as you can see from the applicant's exhibit. The property lines between the homes are estimated on this exhibit, so an average is not calculated for the side setbacks. Based on a visual survey, there appear to be narrow side yard setbacks for many of the homes. In this context, the proposed side setback of 4.5 feet appears to be consistent with the existing development pattern in the neighborhood. The applicant's third request to deviate from the underlying zone district requirements is to increase the height of the structure from 30 feet to 31 feet. There are examples of taller buildings in the neighborhood, including the multifamily structure on Nevada Street a block away. This structure is 40 feet in height to the main roof line. On the block face of this development, the existing pattern is shorter than the building heights. The development under a planned development overlay must also be consistent with the downtown design standards and guidelines. Staff's full analysis is provided in the staff communication. I will go over a few of the more pertinent standards as part of this presentation. Standard 422S1, ground floor uses shall each have a public pedestrian entry directly connected to the public sidewalk along the street. Walkways between South Curtis Street sidewalk and the main entrance to each unit. Buildings shall be designed to provide a human scale, interest, and variety while maintaining an overall sense of relationship with adjoining or nearby buildings. Standard 431SA2, new buildings and additions to existing buildings shall respect the forms and character of the existing older residential buildings. Standard 431SA3, primary building facades shall include some elements that provide a change in plane that create interest through the interplay of light and shadow. This development proposes front porches, vertical windows, sloped roofs, and has lap siding as the primary exterior building material. The architectural features offered by the applicant appear to be compatible with the downtown design standards and guidelines. The doors shown on the illustrative plan on the front facade with glass panes, French doors, are visually incompatible with the character of the older residential neighborhood. Windows may be more appropriate than doors in the location. The staff recommendation included in your staff report does have a condition of approval that requests that the applicant swap out the French doors for windows to make it more compatible with the neighborhood. Design standards that will be reviewed by staff at the time of the site development plan include rooftop mechanical equipment screening, open space and landscaping, screening, walls and fencing, outdoor lighting, and paving materials. So all of those are components of the site plan that will be evaluated against the plan development overlay as it is approved by Planning Commission. The final piece within the staff analysis discusses how the proposed development complements the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Downtown Neighborhood Policy Land Use 3, the existing character of the old downtown neighborhood should be preserved. The proposed duplex will utilize many of the architectural elements and building materials of the older single-family homes in the neighborhood, including pitched roofs, front porches, and lap siding that reinforces the existing character of the neighborhood. The application appears to meet the criteria for a plan development overlay application with two conditions of approval. One, that no doors other than the main entrance to each unit shall be allowed on the front facade. Two, at the time of site development plan, staff shall review the development for consistency with all sections of the downtown design standards and guidelines. Resolution 04-2017 reflects the staff recommendation, and it's included in your packet. I'm here for any initial questions. As I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, the applicant is here this evening to make a presentation, and I'm here for any questions.
Do we have any technical questions for staff? Anybody want to start?
Robin does.
Rob, go ahead.
So I have a question, and it's on the letter of intent. So in the letter, it talks about the request for a reduction of the south property line would allow for more livable duplex units. And I would just like some clarification on what it means by livable.
I will leave that one to the applicant, since it's the applicant's letter of intent. It's not something that was produced by staff.
So on the 10-9-1 under intent, you know how it talks about how it's supposed to be more effective and efficient? It's just in that first paragraph.
In the staff report,
No, that's in 10.9-1.
10 point, I'm
The
sorry.
PDO, the chapter 9 in the PDO.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, in the PDO section. Okay, yeah.
So it talks about the property may be developed in a more effective and efficient manner. So I'd just like to know how you see this property being more effective and efficient.
Well, we look for effective and efficient to be consistent with the design standards and complementary and compatible with the neighborhood, and all of that analysis is provided in the staff report. So that's,
That's how you, okay.
yeah.
So my last question, and this is on the development standard, also in the PDO. It talks about demonstrating special attention to creative, high-quality design, and then also providing a substantial benefit to the city, like you had covered. So in the staff communication, it says the benefit to the city is architectural design of high quality using building materials and architectural features that are commonplace to the Curtis Street, which I do agree with what you're saying. So my understanding when you're using with the PDO, you want something that is more so than what is already present in the codes. And looking at what we were given, these designs that you were talking about are actually already covered in Littleton Downtown Design Standards and Guidelines. It looks like it's simply complying with that, not doing anything extra or above. And I could read you the different areas, and you've covered a couple of them, the
Right.
4.1.2. So I'd just like some clarification on that. It just seems like it's complying with them. Nice job, lovely looking building, conforming to what they're looking for on that. But, with the PDO, we're looking for something that's extra and above, and this just seems to comply.
So I will, again, allow the applicant to respond to that one, because it's their project. Staff's here presenting, the facts and our analysis to you, but the applicant is here, and he can hopefully answer your questions. If not, you can bring it back to staff, and we'll do our best to answer it as well.
Bruce?
Can you do me a favor and pull the pictures up that you had at the front of this?
That one? With the,
Go back a little
is there a
further.
better one?
I think you had a bigger one.
Bigger one? Bigger? That one? No?
Well, all right, yeah,
Maybe that
okay,
one?
yeah, those are good.
Okay.
So, actually, before I get to this one, I'll tell you what, we'll come back to this one.
Okay.
But there's the one with all the houses on the block.
Oh, that one, okay. This one,
Yeah,
right? That
that's
one?
close. Yeah, so my question, refresh my memory here, the setback measurement, is that from predominantly the facade, or is it measured from the steps?
So it is from the right-of-way line to the roof overhang.
Say that again?
So the right-of-way line with the lot line, so the city's road, right there,
Roof
Curtis.
overhang.
To the roof overhang, that's how the setbacks are measured.
So if there's no roof overhang, then would it be theoretically the facade or the?
Right, where the dirt hits the building, and that's
Not
technically.
the steps.
Right, it would be, yeah, technically right where the dirt, that's where the setbacks are measured. Unless there was a covered porch, and then it would be to the steps, because if the porch was part of it.
Part of the
right.
house, yeah. Okay. That's interesting on the overhang. Okay.
Which is why the applicant is requesting that an additional relief from that side setback because of the roof overhang of wanting to have 1.5 feet of roof overhang.
Yeah, okay. And I appreciate that clarification because I hadn't connected those dots. Do you guys know what, my recollection is there's some code requirements somewhere with respect to turning radiuses to get into a garage. And I know we've seen this, for example, like at maybe Littleton Village and stuff like that. When you've got a two-car garage coming off an alley, are they technically meeting whatever criteria are in place with respect to turning radius?
Yes, in 10.4.9, there's driveway length requirements. And if they don't meet the driveway length requirements, then we have them run turning templates.
Okay.
And this has been evaluated, so they meet the driveway length requirement.
Do you? Okay. So the green on your
I guess, or this gray here, this what?
well, the dark gray is the
This is
garage, right?
Right, the garage, and then it's the apron, the concrete apron outside of it, that's the driveway.
Okay, gotcha.
And then the alley is just beyond that. So some of the alleys are very narrow. This one's a 12-foot alley. We actually have some areas in the city that are 6-foot alleys.
Yeah.
And that makes your turning template a lot harder.
Yeah, okay, that's good. But I mean, it's been worked through, so you guys have looked at that, so that's not an issue. So let's now, if you would please go back to that picture with
Keep
the,
going that one, or you want me to keep
the one
going?
with the side view.
Double, okay.
Yeah.
Went really far.
That's
That
it.
one, is that one
Yeah.
okay? Okay.
So the height measurement, again, refresh my memory on we're measuring 31 feet from the gabling there at the top facing front, or is it the main roof line below? I think it's gabling is the right word. You tell me, where's the height 31 foot being measured from?
So in our, we had a code change in a couple years ago, but the way we have been measuring height is to the midline of the roof. So it's to the pitch, the middle of the peak.
Okay,
So that doesn't take into account the pitch of this roof. So there's a little bit of additional height if you go to the tippy top of the roof.
okay.
That's, I think, where you're going, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
well,
it just kind of cuts off the top of the,
Yeah, so we're actually talking, so you're 31 foot, and I mean, part of this might be, we've got several folks that are fresh in terms of seeing some of this stuff. So the 31 foot then is from sort of the midline of those peaks, and,
kind of sits back where, on this photo, can I use the mouse? So it kind of ends up being right along here is the top of the roof. It doesn't take into account these little pitches.
okay, which is probably what, another foot or two?
Yeah, probably, to be safe, 2 feet.
Okay. But it's more just,
So the bulk and scale, it was so that the bulk and mass
mass.
didn't look so big with the height. So that's where they set the point at the midpoint of the roof to also encourage the height and the pitched roofs, because if you discourage the pitched roofs, then everything's flat and you don't get the architecture that is, consistent with what traditional Littleton looks like.
okay. And then there's, just looking at some of the other properties on that street, there's 5580 is sort of I don't know if it's an apartment or it's sort of a red brick kind of thing, more or less. Is it an apartment next to there's a house that Randy Stein lived in on the corner, and then it's next door to that to the
Right.
north. And is that going to be sort of consistent with this 30-foot height limitation, and because it's an R5 property?
Yeah, R5 will let you go up to 43.6 dwelling units per acre and 30 feet in height. So the height is, so they would all be measured using that pitch of the roof to the midpoint of the peak. So on the other side, though, of behind this is the Nevada.
Right.
And that's in CA zoning, and that lets you go up to 40 feet or 3 stories. So immediately behind it is going to be taller stuff.
No, agreed with that, but I guess then the question is, for the commission,
yeah.
then when we talk about the quote-unquote neighborhood, the representation of the neighborhood is beyond just Curtis Street,
I
or
think there is.
theoretically? I know the downtown neighborhood plan carved out several of these streets. It was Curtis and Nevada, might be, the
Right.
side streets, Berry and whatnot.
So I think which number is this in your staff report? Page 3 in your staff report, figure 2 and figure 3 has some of the houses. Those are only 2 stories, so this would be a 3-story element right between some of those.
Yeah, but I guess the question I was trying to ask is, we talk in here about the neighborhood design goals. So the neighborhood in this case could be construed as Curtis Street, but also theoretically Nevada and some of these other side streets, as opposed to just strictly this block of Curtis.
Right, so it goes, I actually have a picture in here of the downtown
Right.
area where it goes. So it goes up to Crestline Avenue to the north and down past Powers. And then
Yeah.
Santa Fe, it's a
That triangle.
It's that triangle,
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Okay.
Trapezoidal type curve piece, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. Two last questions and I'll stop. What are the guidelines, and I didn't overtly see them in here, but on a townhome development, do we have code stipulation somewhere with respect to the amount of sound deadening material between the units?
No, we don't have anything in.
Okay, so the applicant can explain what they're doing and what the
What kind of
expectation.
construction techniques, windows or whatever they're going to be doing, because there's ways you can insulate against sound.
Yeah, okay, great. And then you said something about rooftop mechanical, but I'm looking at the side elevation. I don't see any rooftop mechanical. I assume there isn't any, but it was something that you mentioned.
So that's one of the things we evaluate with the site plans. So we had another, over off of Sycamore, we had some duplexes go in over there, and they also had a PDO, I think that came to you in September with the Planning Commission. They decided to leave more area in the backyard and put the HVAC units up on the roof.
Gotcha.
So if they were to do that here, we would evaluate to make sure they were screened and not visible, and wherever the placement of the, even not just rooftop mechanical, but if they place the HVAC units down on the ground, they would need to be screened as well.
Of course, yeah, okay, thank you.
More questions for staff? Anyone? My turn. What's the criteria for for a project like this going to the Board of Adjustment versus a PDO process?
So the Board of Adjustment, you have to prove a hardship.
Okay, that explains it right there. You don't need to go any further. Let's see. Setbacks, let's clarify the setbacks.
And sir, one more thing. So
ahead.
you also don't need to provide a higher quality of design. So that's the other element. You don't
Okay,
have to prove.
trade-offs.
It's trade-offs, yeah.
Okay. Setbacks. North is, side setback on north is 5 feet, south is 10 feet. It's to the building face, correct? Not to the overhang, or is it to the overhang?
To the overhang,
The overhang,
yes. Some jurisdictions in the code.
most.
Most, yeah. No, a lot of them, most of them, yes. Everywhere I've worked has allowed you to encroach into the setback with an overhang or eaves or mechanical appurtenances. We don't have like window wells and stuff. We don't have that. It's by our definition, a structure is anything that is built, and the setback is to the point of the structure. So the roof overhang, it's been included in those setbacks.
So you kind of proved that my point would be either our zoning code is wildly out of date or we just allow anything. Most municipalities on a 50-foot lot has 5-foot setbacks to the face. Overhangs can go further in. Window wells don't count.
Right. Front
front
stoops
steps.
don't count, front steps don't
all
count,
that.
unless it's an enclosed area, it wouldn't count.
Well, we allow duplexes on a 50-foot lot. It's almost impossible to do.
575 square feet is the minimum lot size in some of the zone districts for a duplex.
It makes it extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Let's see. It seems, and I've argued about this before, it seems like the rear driveway is excessive. Most municipalities, like Denver, for instance, a 5-foot setback from the rear property line for accessing a garage. And if you have to K-turn 5 times, so be it. What that does is, and they have caveats for, carrots for having detached garages. We don't allow that, so we've got a great expanse of pavement in the back, and maybe it'd be nice to get some backyard in some of these projects.
So the rear setback is also 20 feet in R5. So being an attached garage, you need that 20 feet, and then you meet the driveway length requirements as well.
Okay, yeah, Denver, okay, well.
Yep.
Let's see, what is Bruce talked about the height. What is the top is the average, the midpoint of the roof slope. Where do you start from? Where's the base? Say if you have a sloping site, is it an average of the front and back? Is it the side, or do you even know?
No, I know.
It's
We
probably
have had
confusing in our
many a
code.
conversation about height.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, our definition for height is very similar to Douglas County's. It's verbatim, actually. So you take a datum point. So it's to allow for a walkout condition. So if you've got a sloped site and you've got a 2-story element in the front and a walkout condition in the back, and there's a difference on that side elevation with the ground, with the sloping, that it's a difference of greater than 10 feet, you get to go up from the lowest point 10 feet to a new datum point and set your new 0. So if it's 10, it's a moot point, right? Because, you can go up 10 and you're right to the point of the building, right in the front anyway. If it's 20 feet, you only get to go up 10. So it's to allow you to average all 4 of those sides together to get a building height, to allow you to use the grades instead of grading everything, and you allow for a walkout condition without being dinged completely for having a walkout and not meeting the height.
Is that something that's written in the code, or is it
Oh,
just
yeah,
an
that's in the
interpretation?
definitions.
Okay,
Oh,
I need to
that's.
look at it again. Okay.
And then if it is less than a 10-foot difference, you go to the highest point of the grade differential.
And up.
And you don't get to start a new 0. You start right where the dirt hits the ground and go all the way up.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to make a presentation? I assume they would. It is your turn.
Yep, right here. I'm just going to go through that.
Good evening. I'm William Rivera of MA Architects, here on behalf of MA Architects and the owner, Mark Pizzaferrato. I just want to briefly run through some of the points that many have already been covered, and just to explain some more and then answer some of your questions that you may have and some that you've already brought up that I hope to bring some clarity to. So the duplex project on 5530 South Curtis. The existing project, the existing building there is, if you've seen it, a bit of an eyesore at the moment.
Could you speak a little closer to the microphone, please? Thank you.
The existing building,
Much
there's a
better.
bit of an eyesore at the moment. I believe renovations started some time ago and never finished by a prior owner. So we had hoped to come in and put in a duplex, which I believe are allowed by right as use on this project, on this property. We decided to go with the PDO because we could do that, but in order to get additional setback relief and things like that, this is really the only process available to us. So I wanted to run through some of our items. Now, here on the elevations, which you've already seen, here's again, a blow-up of our board. And I just want to touch on how we feel that we meet a number of the items requested of us. In terms of how we handle the comprehensive plan, the city has 7 items in their comprehensive plan. They summarize the characteristics that drive, and bear with me, I'm having a little trouble seeing this in this light, that drive the vision, goals, policies, and implementation strategies. We feel that the PDO requested development at 5530 South Curtis Street property meets the goals. The 7 goals are small town character, quality design, economic development, public realm, sustainability, connectivity and access, and process. First, to address small town character. I believe the house in this style, bit of a craftsman style with detailing similar to other houses found in this part of town, even outside of the R5 district. It fits in well, especially with a lot of the new development being put in. In terms of scale, it's of fairly similar size to homes across the street, up and down the street. Even with the additional foot that we're asking for, and I have a diagram I can bring up in a moment, this house from the front facade in this drawing looks like a 3-story home, but the way it'll be perceived at the sidewalk and street level is a 2-story building. Quality design, which came up earlier, one of the items for quality design requirement for PDO is to go above and beyond. So what is the standard? Well, if we could just ask for a PDO, if we just went straight duplex, not asking for anything requiring a PDO, we could build a duplex 50s blonde brick ranch house. This is, and that would fit in with the neighborhood and other homes on the site, on the street. We feel this goes well above and beyond the adjacent homes, with the exception of a few others, which are about the equivalent of this. So that is our interpretation of quality design. So, what do we have here? In terms of sizes of the units, and these units are meant for sale. So in terms of the sizes of the units, the north unit is about 1,920 square feet total, plus a full basement, plus a 2-car garage. The south unit is about 2,150 square feet total, plus a basement, plus a 2-car garage. And we're hoping these units sell for about $750,000 apiece. Going to one of the questions about the setbacks. The front setback, again, we're trying to have the porch meet the average setback on the block. That's really what the only relief we're asking for on the front. On the south, we're asking that the building foundation essentially be 6 foot plus the 1.5 foot overhang into it, so 4.5 feet. But in reality, for the building itself, we're looking for 4 feet of relief with an additional 1.5 foot of overhang. On the height, and I'll use this cursor here, the 31-foot line is right around where my cursor is. So the overall building is about 33 feet. Now this portion of the building is actually set back quite a bit from the street. Here's a diagram. So on the lower left there, I have an eye at about 5.5 feet above the center of the sidewalk. Property line shown. And you can see that if you're standing directly in front of the building, you may not even see the 3rd story. Now, if you're walking down the street and you're peeking between trees on either side of the property, you'll get glimpses of it. So in terms of looking at this purely in 2 dimension from the front, it can be deceiving. So I really wanted to show this, to know that the 1 foot is not as dominant as you think it would be. And just use those arrows there. Oh, thanks. Another item with the side setback and your question about what does it mean to make the duplex units more livable? Additional width inside the units. And because we're trying to have 2-car garages side by side, we're pretty much required, because a parking spot is 9 feet wide by code. So you need garages that are essentially 18 feet wide inside. And by the time you add those up, we run out of room on a 50-foot lot. So the widest portion of the building is the garage. The rest of the buildings actually step back in towards the center or the new property line down the middle. So our closest portion of the building to the property line are the garages. We have more room than the rest of the building. So it's not a monolithic wall at 6 feet. This is an aerial photograph of this block and the stretch of street. So regarding other properties and their setbacks, whether it be the main building or their accessory structures, calculating, I didn't put numbers to this, but looking at fences, which you would assume are on or very close to a property line, you can start to see the pattern of south property line encroachment on both sides of the street on these blocks. So we feel that we are aligning ourselves with other properties on the project, on the block. So I'm not trying to narc the other properties here, but and in terms of neighborhood approval, we have, I guess, positive responses from the vast majority of mailings and people that the owner went door to door to talk to. I've included this letter that was sent in, and from Community Matters, someone in the neighborhood with a ringing endorsement for this project. So the neighborhood is essentially on board with this. Would you like me to read the letter? They're turning around if you're okay with it.
Yeah. Up to you guys.
Could these letters have been submitted with our packet? Would have been probably a nice little feature. And you say you have more than one letter?
This letter came in recently, so it was after. This was something that was personally given to the owner of the property.
I don't believe it was provided to the city.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe the city received the letter.
Okay.
A question about sound mitigation between the units. We plan on building a 2-hour fire separation. That assembly is, to be technical, 5/8 gyprock, 2x4 wall, a little bit of an airspace, then 1-inch gypsum, and then a repeat of the 2x4 and 5/8. It's common in multifamily and a bit above and beyond for a project like this. So it's good sound attenuation. I mean, a 1-inch thick gypsum panel will block a lot of sound.
Okay.
So if you have any additional questions?
Any questions for the applicant?
What did you say the square footage of the two units?
The north unit is approximately 1,920 square feet, not including a full basement, not including the 2-car garage. The south unit is approximately 2,150 square feet, not including the basement, not including the 2-car garage.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just a little more specific about my question, and I know you tried to answer it, but I wanted to give a little more detail. So you talked about how you see this home as being higher quality based on what you could do versus, what you did do. And it is a very nice looking home, and the craftsman style definitely fits in with the character of it. But my comment had more to do with when you go into the standards and the guidelines, it discusses that those things are necessary, that you're looking at a traditional gabled roofed or porches like what you're doing here, horizontal lap siding or the shingles, and that it complements the residential character, the neighborhood is desirable. So my comment is you are doing that, but I want to know how you're doing it above and beyond. And there was, also in here, when you go into the standards and guidelines at 4.2.1, Standard 2, it talks about you have to have high quality materials, the large windows, the highest level design and detail. So that's already built in here. And you went through and showing how you were doing that, but I'm just curious, how have you gone above and beyond to want to make this a PDO and get these changes?
Yeah, my understanding of how those design guidelines are applied is that, and Carol may be able to correct me on this if I'm wrong or assist me, is that if you're asking something from the city, whether it be to develop a property in a way it wasn't meant to be, go through a PDO process. Those are the standards and guidelines that you have to comply with. If we were to build a single-family home that needed no special approvals, we would not have to apply to those guidelines.
Okay.
We, in my theory, should be able to.
No, you would still have to meet the design guidelines and standards if you were doing a single-family home.
We went straight zoning, not requesting anything.
Yes, it would be evaluated and reviewed for compliance with the site.
Well, would a
standards.
single-family home have to go through site plan review, even if it's just a simple single-family home, no setback requirements, no nothing?
We still evaluate the setbacks, and all of the setbacks, all of the performance standards for the zone district are evaluated with your building permit. You do not need to go through a site plan for a single-family home. Anything more than one dwelling unit is considered multifamily, and that would have to go through a site planning process.
Right.
So if you went straight, so all of the other projects that you and your firm have done that have been not through a PDO have been subject to those design standards as well.
Correct.
So even if it was a duplex, so you have to meet those.
Okay, but even as just a single-family residence, not requesting setback relief or height relief or anything would also have to go through that?
A single family does not go through a site plan process.
Right, so if it doesn't go through a site plan process, does it also then have to abide by the guidelines? Because every district has guidelines asking for certain things.
Yes,
but there
and
are
it
contemporary
depends on
projects.
where you're building the single-family home. You're right. So in the majority of the city at the moment, we do not have required design guidelines for single-family homes, and most are done without site plan. Generally, that's the case.
Okay,
But you're building anything more than one dwelling unit is considered multifamily, so therefore a duplex would be subject to all the design standards, which
understood.
all the other projects that have been done that were duplexes or more have had to go through the design standards, whether it's sub-area 2 or 4 or 5 or any of them.
okay. We feel we've gone above and beyond. As designers, I mean, I think the project would look nice on the street. I think it meets or exceeds the other recently renovated or built homes on the street. We think it's above and beyond some of the original homes from the 50s on the street. So that's our interpretation of going beyond, above and beyond, or high-quality design.
And how do you see this as benefiting the city?
It's a newer project. It increases density a little, but not significantly, which is a good thing. If more people downtown, living downtown, shopping downtown, eating downtown, has its own parking, 4 spots. That's fewer cars on the street at night during the day. It's a nice new property, which helps attract potential new buyers for other properties, helps other homeowners decide to upgrade their properties, whether it's for themselves or to sell. It's a multiplier effect, as I see it. So,
Thank you.
welcome.
Other questions? Sure. Jason?
Thank you. Could you please address the staff condition recommending the elimination of the French doors and also your design decision to place an entry on the side when a lot of the design standards emphasize focusing on the street?
Well, we feel that because we have front setback, we had intended to have a essentially front courtyard, one for each property. Our desire to have the French doors or sliding doors, regardless, is so that they could access their courtyard, walk out onto the porch, open the room up to their courtyard, which also then opens their room up to the street and connects them to the street. One of the things with the guidelines is creating a better pedestrian experience and also connecting the buildings to the street. Having people sitting on porches and their front yards saying hi to people as they walk by is a wonderful way to activate a building. So that was our desire, to have that kind of access to the front yard. We have a requirement to have a front porch, essentially. The south unit has a living room right there. It would, in our opinion, be a bit of a shame to not be able to access it directly instead of having the front door right there. The front door is 15 feet down. The north unit, the front door is facing the street, albeit it's about 10 feet back from the front edge of the building. That is a design decision we made. We wanted to minimize the impact on the front courts by having sidewalks running directly through them. Yes, well, there's an existing tree there that we've gone through great pains to work around and try to preserve.
Please,
Can you
you're going
come
to speak,
speak?
you need to come to the microphone. If you give your name, please.
Yes, hi, I'm John Matthews with MA Architects, and I just wanted to add to what Will was saying is there's a good-sized tree in the front yard that we felt that it was important to save. And that tree, if you look at the positioning of it relative to the south unit, it would have essentially been right in front of the entry. And we were also trying to create some diversity in the fronts of the two units by having one unit with a front door and another unit perhaps with the door around the side, and then open those front courtyards, which are very nice outdoor living spaces to be able to take advantage of the residents living there, to be able to take advantage of that front yard living, to really activate the street, to activate the front of the building. So hopefully that answers.
Other questions?
This may be a question more for staff. Does this zone district have different setbacks for accessory structures? Most of the structures he pointed out being closer to the lot lines were accessory structures.
Yes, there are different setbacks for accessory structures.
So those could be closer to lot lines
Yes,
than
sir.
a primary structure, so that's sort of a different class of structure. Thank you.
Andrew, anything? Bruce?
You discussed the concept of quote-unquote high-quality design with respect to elements of style, which interestingly, I read it and gravitated more towards content. I get your point that the style attributes fit well, and as you said, you guys believe they go beyond what's in the neighborhood. I was thinking more from the standpoint, and I don't know which of these is correct. I mean, maybe they're both correct. I was thinking that it had more to do with quality of materials used in the project, because certainly you can use better or higher or lower quality lap siding, for the sake of an argument, higher or lower quality brick. You're going to pay more or less one way or the other. So two questions. I mean, are they both accurate representations of quality at that level? And then I guess secondly, with respect to content of construction materials, are you guys going above standard grade? And can you talk to some of that? But maybe the first question is, how do we actually interpret the word quality here?
Staff's interpretation is similar to yours, sir, that it's higher quality materials, higher quality of design.
So it's both?
Yes, but the materials is an aspect of it instead of just, hardy board siding would be a higher quality material than other types of siding, different types of higher quality windows,
Okay.
but more glazing on the windows to protect more for sound attenuation and other elements of that needs to go into the design.
So, yeah, so maybe, and I don't think you've touched on it, but maybe you can give us, 30-second or 20,000-foot view on the quality of the materials you guys are using relative to standard grade, general construction kinds of aspects.
Okay, starting at the base of the building, we are looking at doing full brick, real brick, as opposed to thin brick. Moving up on the lower level, we have some board and batten, which will be, it's kind of a vertical siding, large boards with a 1.5 inch batten, and you can see that in a number of properties here. The majority of the siding on the building will be horizontal lap siding, 6-inch exposure, hardy board. It's lasts forever.
What would be a lower grade product that could get used there that you're not using?
Masonite, something that can eventually absorb moisture and explode, and if the homeowner doesn't feel like taking care of it, you have an eyesore. So at that point, it's not just painting, it's actually degradation of the material. None of the materials we're using are subject to rapid or even mid-term degradation. Everything is designed, engineered by the manufacturers to last, and brick is just brick. It lasts forever.
Okay.
Unlike thin brick, it doesn't have the potential to pop off with a little vibration from a large truck coming down the street or something. It's full depth brick. So sitting on a brick ledge, fully supported. Windows will be high quality. We're planning on vinyl, double insulated, large windows. The roofing will be probably a 25-year asphalt shingle. And some appealing paint colors, a good range of neutral colors, but still warm and should fit into the neighborhood nicely.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thanks.
Well, just one maybe question, comment. A little bit perturbed about the height, even though it's only 1 foot. I noticed by your elevations that you've got 9-foot ceilings in both the first and the second level. Well, you could have 8'6" ceilings in the first and upper level, and you wouldn't need the 1 foot. It seems like you're kind of threw that in. As long as you're going for a PDO, you throw that in, see if you get it. Care to comment?
9-foot ceilings are an excellent selling point for a property.
Yeah.
And that's essentially it. It's a nicer product with the higher ceilings. So we had looked at flat roof for the uppermost level, which we had back and forth with planning, and went with the pitch roofs that we have now. So, I mean, that would have put us under the 30 feet as well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more
sorry.
question. The plan view shows a courtyard wall between the two courtyards and a fence line along the front.
Yeah.
What's the height of that courtyard wall?
4 feet.
So that's the same as the fence along the front?
Yes.
Along the sidewalk?
Right.
And what are the materials of the fence and the courtyard wall?
Maybe he's talking about this.
And imagine the fence along the street or at the courtyard between the properties.
Both.
The fence along the street, well, not completely designed yet, will more than likely be something very open. We want as much privacy as we can get, but we also realize that the city does not want a 4-foot-high wall there. So it'll be a spaced wood fence or an iron fence. The courtyard wall in between will more than likely be a little more solid for some actual visual privacy, and although only 4 feet high, some sound privacy for sitting down between the two courtyards.
Mind if I ask staff a question? What is the height limit on fence in the front setback?
Less than 4 feet, 50% open.
4 feet, 50% open. Thank you. Is that it? Any other questions? I think now I can say thank you again. Appreciate it. We'll now open the hearing for public comment. You have 3 minutes to speak. After 2 minutes, 30 seconds, they'll raise the yellow card. At 3 minutes, we raise the red card. Your speaking time is over. Please be civil. Please come to the microphone, state your name, address, or your district number, and please speak clearly into the microphone. We have 3 speakers. First one is, looks like it's Brad Pearson, 5503 South Prince Street. You wish to speak? Okay. John Matthews?
Oh, I spoke.
Okay. And Mark, can't pronounce it.
Ferrato, Pizza Ferrato.
Do you wish to speak?
I would like to say, can I go ahead?
It's interesting, Kenny. Why not? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just think in getting back to the question about, the PDO process and, does it create higher quality? I feel in this case, this is a good example of why it does create higher quality, because it's allowing us to make the building marginally bigger, but we still have a good amount of open space on the ground floor, the whole front yard living space, that courtyard with the front porch to the street, which I think is excellent neighbor, on the block. It really relates to the whole neighborhood and the front yard living. It allows for some courtyards, off the south and the north side. And it allows us to do a product that can be sold for $750,000. And I think that by itself on this block is an upgrade. It's a very charming block, and we really do care about the fact that we wanted to keep the character of this block. But one thing, when you really look at the R5 zoning, if we were willing to spend the money and build a parking garage underneath this thing, we could build an apartment building and have a lot more density. So I think for the city to end up with two quality, very high quality, single family attached residences for sale, within walking distance of downtown Littleton in, what is, a very pedestrian oriented community. I mean, this is a big plus for the city to get a project like this. So anyway, that's just my opinion, and thank you guys very much for your time and all your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone that hasn't signed up that wishes to speak? Yes, please. Please. State your name, your address, please.
Hi there, my name's Tom Belzer, and I own two houses on Curtis Street, 5539 and 5509. This is awesome. This block hasn't really had any kind of redevelopment yet. Many of the houses are really old. Mine are really old, 1930s. So to have this kind of development is beautiful for the city, for bringing in a higher class neighborhood. I think it's all very, very, very positive.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Pam?
My name is Pam Chadbourne, and I live a block and a half from here and from the proposed development. So it's interesting what you call higher class. I happen to think that the neighborhood as it used to exist, with working class people who could not afford $750,000 homes, especially really narrow ones that are so narrow that they're kind of undesirable unless they have 3 floors. That's the neighborhood, and that's the community, and that's the class that I think is downtown. It always has been. That's what downtown Littleton is. So I'm going to tell you, it's not my job to check the facts or figures. It's my job to ask you, as Planning Commission, when are you going to draw the line? Developers can read the rules. They know what they can do. Why don't they bring that to you instead of edging in on every side? Let's get closer to the property line to the guy next door. Let's get higher and block out more light for the neighbors. Let's make it as narrow as we can. The narrowness of a garage, that's the widest part of these. There's too much on this lot. Now, you can say our code needs to be updated, but I guess I would say that it needs to be rethought. This is a design issue, folks. We have it downtown, we have lot sizes. When Planning Board passed the gentrification rezoning of R5 and CA, you should have or could have at that time realized that that would cause these kind of conflicts, and I call them conflicts because it is. This wipes out the existing neighborhood one lot at a time. And notice how they and you keep referring to, oh, the new development, and matches the new development. That isn't what historic downtown is all about. And it's going to be gone. And I'm looking at the board that's responsible for that. So I don't think this complies. I think you ought to ask them to comply with our rules. And I think they can do that. and still make a profit. And draw the line, send the message. This is only happening because Planning Board, Planning Commission has given these exceptions on Sycamore and just continues to go and go. Please draw the line somewhere and enforce the rules. Let developers know that we have a neighborhood, that there are rules. So let me just say, relationship with the surrounding neighborhood, character of the community is us, the people, not just the architecture. So affordability, the type of people who live in downtown, that matters too. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the hearing. Commissioners, do we have a motion?
Well, let's find it.
Looking at me?
No, I'm looking for the motion.
Here, I can.
Let's see here. All right.
I can show you on this.
Yeah, no, I've got it here. All right, I move to approve Planning Commission Resolution 04-2017 concerning 5530 South Curtis Street, which forwards a favorable recommendation to City Council with the following conditions. 1, no doors other than main entrance to each unit shall be allowed on the front facade. Main entrance doors shall not consist of glass panes throughout its length, i.e. French doors. And 2, at the time of site development plan, staff shall review the development for consistency with all remaining sections of the downtown design standards and guidelines, sub-area 4.
Sir, may I make one clarification? This is an error in the staff report. This does not go to City Council. You guys are the decision-making body on a PDO.
Right. How do you want me to address that? I just move to approve striking the forwarding of recommendation to City Council.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Adjusted motion accordingly.
I thought in your write-up that it was going to go to council. Is that not correct?
A PDO does not go to city council, that is correct.
PDO does not go to council.
You have final decision-making
Excuse
authority.
me, okay. Discussion.
Need a second.
Oh, yes, we need a second.
Second.
Andrew, this is second. Discussion. We can do this one by one, start that end. Or
Certainly. One of my concerns, in the questions I was asking had to do with the side yard setbacks. I calculated the amount of open space we'd be likely to see if a structure were to meet all the setbacks in the underlying zoning, and it would actually be more open space than is being proposed this evening if a structure were to meet all the setbacks. The staff did address the concern with setbacks, talking about the 4.5 feet being consistent with a number of the other setbacks in the area. And the applicant's response regarding saving the tree and their desire to have the entrance on the side in order to maintain that streetscape addressed my concern.
Andrew?
I think it looks like a good project. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce?
After, or do you want to go down? Just, that's fine.
So you could be second to last, okay.
I don't, yeah, however you want to do it, it's fine.
Pro Tem has spoken.
Yeah, after review of the plans and proposed development, looks to be a very high-quality development that is in line with other redevelopments in the city of Littleton and downtown area, and I believe it's a quality of development for Littleton.
Rob?
It is a nicely designed craftsman, and the craftsman style does fit in with this area. I don't have a problem with the 16 feet because, again, I think that complies with what the standards also discuss. But I do have some concerns with this. I'm going to start and just kind of go through them. The first one is when you're dealing with an R5 in the residential, when you're adding a foot you actually are supposed to the height, they actually want you to give a greater setback on the sides and the front. I know this is a PDO, so you can still request it, but that is just something to note here, that with the extra foot, typically you would actually create more side or front setback with that. When I was looking at the downtown neighborhood plan, I agree that it did meet some of the principle there with the quality design, except I'm concerned with the appropriately scaled aspect of the quality design. When I look through LU1, it says to achieve a desired scale. LU3, conform to the existing scale. This is a smaller scale residential according to LU3. Mass and feel of the neighborhood. LU9 talks about the height with respect to the historical scale and the character here. So when I look at those and I see this building and I compare it to the other houses around it, particularly this neighborhood is mostly single-story, smaller homes. There are the two-story buildings. This particular building fills up the lot as it can based on what you've asked for your setbacks. But when you look at some of the other two-story buildings, they'll have a side yard or they'll have a backyard or they'll have some kind of space in it where it doesn't completely fill up this lot. My other concern is there are no three-story buildings on this, and there's just very few two-stories. You put a third story, you're setting a precedent for a neighborhood that's mostly single-story homes. So when I look at the downtown standards and guidelines, the sub-area 4 North Residential, again, the character of the building is nice. It fits in with it very nice as a craftsman. But when I actually read the guidelines, I'm just going to go through them. 4.2.1, and you're looking at O2, to provide informal observation and streets of open space from adjoining buildings. And I've kind of talked about that. When you walk down this street, the setbacks on the side are strange. I agree with that. It's an eclectic neighborhood. But when you look at how they're juxtapositioned with each other, even with that eclecticness, it still shows spaces between the houses, whether they use a sideline or they don't. So I'm concerned that it doesn't meet that. 4.2.5, the on-site open space provision and location is to create areas and spaces on the property where appropriate for the purpose of maintaining privacy between adjoining uses and for exposure to sunlight or the daylight. Again, because of the size of this building, that it goes all the way down the property line, it doesn't have any side yards or backyards that a lot of the other ones do that give some privacy to each other. I don't see it meeting that. And 4.3, particularly point 1, building scale, form, massing, and character. To moderate scale changes between adjacent buildings. And that's a big concern. You're next to single-story buildings. Couple down is a double-story building, yes, but you are next to single-story, and there's a wide swatch of single-story going down the other way until you almost get to the end of the block. It's a 3-story building. I don't think the scale and the mass and the form fit with the neighbors right there. 4.3.1 SA1 also talks about maintaining an overall sense of relationship with the adjoining buildings, which is what I was just discussing. Yeah, 4.4 with the landscape architect. 4.1.107 to ensure adequate buffering between adjacent land uses. Again, I've spoken about how this doesn't seem to conform with the other properties that are found on this block face. It is a nice building. The style works very well. It does fit with the neighborhood, but I do not think it conforms to the downtown standards and guidelines based on what I've expressed. I think it meets the other stuff that you were talking about. It is a nice building. You use good quality. You're matching what it is looking existing, but its scale, its mass, and its form, I do not think conforms to the neighborhood. Maybe if it was a 2-story building, more like the other 2-story buildings that have a little more of that, it would fit it better. So that's my thoughts.
Bruce.
Thanks. I'm going to do a little bit of the same sort of thing that Commissioner Robin was doing, just from a setting context in terms of how I would view making a decision with respect to this particular project. If you look at essentially what we're dealing with here as a PDO, the Colorado Land Planning and Development Law 8th edition book says that essentially PDO is in essence a deal. It's an exchange of flexibility by the city for extra quality amenities or something else that the community would not otherwise get from a developer. We've captured a lot of that in Code Section 10-9-5, which is the development standards for PDO, which basically says to take advantage of the flexibility allowed by the PDO regulations, the proposed development must demonstrate special attention to creative, high-quality design, which we talked about a lot tonight, in producing a development that reinforces and complements citywide and neighborhood design goals and objectives. Plans that demonstrate such attention may qualify for certain variations from the underlying zone district requirements, provided such variations can be accomplished without impairing the intent of the land use code while providing substantial benefit to the city. So there's a lot in there, and I think our questions were oriented towards trying to weigh and balance your guys' quote-unquote evidence in terms of how we would make a decision. So in this case, what is the essence of the deal based on the evidence that was in fact presented? It appears to me that we're essentially agreeing to allow a 1-foot increase in height versus what's in the code for a townhome development in R5, and ultimately what amounts to be a 6.5 foot reduction of a 6.5 foot reduction on the setbacks in the front, and I think it's a 4 foot south setback reduction based on the overhangs. So, which again we covered in a lot of the questions that were asked. What is the city getting for what we're giving in this context? The same open space percentage is maintained as was discussed. By my calculations, this parcel, given its size and relative to what was described in here as 43.6 dwelling units per gross acre, if you do the math on this, I calculated that we're getting a reduction from a maximum of what could be about 6 dwelling units down to 2 dwelling units, which I think the applicant discussed, which I think is a positive. We're also getting elements of a diversification of housing mix and additional housing stock that we don't really have a lot of. Owner occupied, a townhome / duplex product as opposed to more dense apartments and so forth and so on, which we've heard from the citizens on isn't a desirable outcome at this potential juncture. And I think the gentleman that came down and spoke also mentioned that, yeah, there are property value upsides here for people that own property in that neighborhood, which is not something to be dismissed lightly. There are use by right issues here, and this owner has the right to use and develop his property within certain parameters that accomplish the deal that we're talking about striking. Ultimately the demonstration of the high quality design, I think, has in fact been met. The utilization of architectural elements and building materials that are consistent with the older structures in the neighborhood qualifies. I think they've maintained, generally speaking, the small town character in terms of height and mass. I think from the downtown neighborhood plan, general small scale as far as residential as a primary use and support of diverse mixed housing options is met. And according to the comprehensive plan, section 1-9-B, strengthening the downtown by increasing housing diversity and densities is clearly being met. I'll go back to section Code Section 10-9-5, which talks about reinforcing and complementing the neighborhood design goals and objectives, and I think that's appropriate in this instance. And I don't think that there is any impairment of the intent of the land use code, and I do believe that the neighborhood and the city do see what constitutes substantial benefits on balance when you weigh all the puts and takes here. So as a result, I will support this motion.
Thank you. My points are, I agree with the front setback request change. Go up and down the block and you look at the other houses, they're much closer than the requirement of the zoning code. Side setbacks, I'm a little more uncomfortable with that, but I think the city's code that the setback is to the roof overhang is excessive. We allow townhomes to be built on 2,500 square foot lots, but then the way the zoning code reads, it's fighting it every step of the way. Doesn't make any sense. I've said before, I think our antique buggy whip code needs to be updated. Let's see, two-car garages can't be done otherwise unless they do get that south side setback reduction. As far as the massing of the house, the existing underlining use by right, the code requires 25% open space. They meet that requirement. They're asking for 1 foot over on the height limit. So yes, it's a neighborhood of one-story houses and low-slung two-story houses, but the R5 code allows this type of project with the minor variations that they're asking for. So I will be voting in favor of this. The architecture, craftsman style is, I'd say, quite frankly, so-so. I'm not quite as enamored by it as others are. But it does create people talked about creating a higher quality. I think it does just by the quality amenities of the unit, the two-car garage, the space, the upper level deck. So those are decent amenities for this buyer. Any other comments? Let's go for a vote.
The vote is 5-0. The motion carries.
5-1.
5-1, and the motion carries.
Okay. Leave that up a second. Got it? Got the information? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're still in session, so if you could leave quietly, we'd appreciate it. Our next case is PC Resolution 05-2017. PC Resolution 05-2017, ordinance to amend Title 11, Subdivision Purpose 11.1.2, Subdivision Definitions 11.1.6, and Chapter 9 of the Subdivision Regulation. Could we have a staff report, please? Staff.
Yes, you may. 1 second, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jocelyn Mills, representing this hearing item to you this evening, and as the Chair just said, it's regarding some proposed amendments to the current Title 11, Chapter 9 of the Subdivision Code.
Could I ask you a question before you continue?
Yes.
Are you going to be representing the city as the applicant as well? So are you combining
Yes, sir.
everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Process, as you know, public hearing before you all, and for ordinance changes, Planning Commission role is that you make a recommendation and it gets forwarded on to City Council. and they need to proceed for any ordinance change with a first reading and second reading, and this is the tentative schedule. General background for you, how subdivision fits in the bigger picture of land use. Comp plan is kind of your guiding document. Zoning establishes the uses and the performance standards, and then subdivision generally creates and recreates the legal boundaries of lots within the districts. More background, the subdivision code. This is the definition of subdivision in our current code. I won't read it for you, but generally it tells you what subdivision is. And subdivision, the plat, is the document, the instrument, if you will, that creates lots and parcels. Littleton subdivision code, generally this is the types of process. There's major subdivision, preliminary plat, final plat. In that instance, the preliminary plat approval is through Planning Commission and final plat is through City Council. Minor subdivision, again, preliminary and final plat. Currently, the preliminary plat is administrative and final plat in that capacity would be City Council. And then the majority of what we're speaking about this evening is the Chapter 9 subdivision exemption, and that's administrative. In doing some research, it appears that Chapter 9 was added into our existing code in 1979. And then this is just laying out the purpose and intent of that chapter.
Hold on.
Generally, I'm sorry. Generally, really more around smaller subdivision. There's 5. The division of land must not exceed 2 lots. Must not violate the minimum requirements of the zone districts, must abut a dedicated city street, evidence of utilities, and then adequate water as well, and sanitary. And that's the current code, and if you meet that, then you can be processed under this chapter. As you probably are aware, this has been a conversation in the community and Planning Commission as well as Council. And previously, legal advice has been okay that subdivision exemption worked for 3 things: dividing land into no more than 2 lots, lot line adjustment, and reassembling multiple lots into 1 lot. City Council has had 2 study sessions with staff regarding the proposed amendments before you this evening, March and April, and they were felt comfortable at least moving it forward formally to Planning Commission for your review. And so the amendments this evening are around 3 areas: the purpose of subdivision, definitions, and then Chapter 9. And the intent behind the amendments before you are to update what we currently have, make it more clear, transparent, and really robust around what we're actually doing with these minor processes, and to use best practices. And so it's basically in 3 categories that the proposal is in front of you this evening. We want to amend the title for Chapter 9 to call it administrative plat or replat for 1 or 2 lots. And then within that, we would like to create applicability requirements and criteria for review of those. And I'm going to briefly go through that, which is in your packet as the proposed ordinance. And like I just said, the sections are to amend the purpose and prohibition sections of subdivision, add definitions, and then revise the Chapter 9. So the intent here is for Chapter 9 to be administrative plats and replats for minor changes. So there's 2 categories: that they do not create more than 2 platted lots, or that do not merge more than 2 parcels, platted or unplatted, into 1 platted lot. So here would be examples. Tried to give you some visuals to this. So the first one 1 lot into 2, or 2 into 1. that would be generally, if you met that as the first test, if you will, then you can go on to the next section of this administrative portion in the code to continue to determine if you can process it this way or if it would need to be processed through a minor or major subdivision. So again, in the proposed ordinance, the applicability for administrative plat and replat, and I'll go through these with some graphics for you. The first one, plat unplatted property into 1 or 2 lots. So there's your graphic showing unplatted property into 1 or 2 lots. If you would meet, maybe this would be another one you would meet for a lot line adjustment. Request to move, reconfigure, or advise existing platted lot line. Adjust a platted subdivision boundary between not more than 2 lots within 2 separate subdivisions, but basically the graphic would be the same in either case, where you have 2 lots and you're moving one of those property lines. Adjust a subdivision boundary to include an unplatted parcel of land. Vacate an existing platted easement or building envelope, as long as the easement or envelope was dedicated through a plat process. Merge 2 lots into 1 or correct minor spelling or technical errors. For example, if the legal address was supposed to say lot 1 and it said lot 2, so really minor things like that. So I guess wrapping up, those would be the applicability. So you'd have to determine if what you're wanting to do meets one of those applicability standards. And if it does, then you're able to move forward. If it does not, then that means you would be kicked back to either the minor subdivision process or the major. There are a few proposed restrictions that we have within this section. Not eligible for administrative process would be a request requiring dedication of right-of-way. Also, requests requiring easements that have been dedicated by a separate instrument may be noted on an administrative plat. The third one, no lot created or merged through administrative plat or previous subdivision exemption may be further divided or merged, with the exception of lot line adjustments between 2 lots established through the administrative plat process may be processed as a lot line adjustment as long as it's only within those 2 existing lots, and a minor lot line adjustment. And then there's 3 more restrictions of how we would try to keep this into what could be done administrative versus what would be kicked out to be either processed as a minor subdivision or major subdivision. And then there's criteria for, so if you meet one of those, one of these, if you meet one of those 7 applicabilities to be considered administrative plat or replat, then the next test would be, and here's the criteria. Each parcel created must comply with underlying zone district. Multiple zone districts may not be contained within one administrative plat or replat. The second one, each parcel, there's a certain size, width, and depth by which it would have to meet in order to be processed administratively. And the handout that I gave you is the next 2 slides. So the first one, and I gave you the text because it might be easier to see it that way. But if you go back, so the underline here, lots that are more than 50% greater or 25% smaller in either lot size, depth, or width of a typical average existing lot on the same block face are not eligible for administrative plat or replat. Does not mean they're not eligible to happen, just means it cannot happen through this process. So they would, again, be kicked back to either the major subdivision or minor subdivision, depending on what they're doing. Most likely minor, but. So what we tried to show here is, so block face, and we added a definition of block face into the proposal tonight. It will be, we were looking at the lots on my right, I guess I guess you're right down there or left, where the red stars are on that side of the street is the block face. And so on this table here, it shows all of the lot widths, the lot addresses, the acre size, and then the width. And we had depth as well, we just didn't have room to show it on the table. And then we have down at the bottom is the averages of those, and then the below calculations would be 50% in area, width, and depth. So if you were wanting to combine the two starred lots, then you could do those because the lot would meet the criteria for lot width and the area and the depth, actually. So that could happen. Let's just say the bottom two, on the bottom of the screen, that lot and the one above, you wanted to merge those two together. Just by looking at it, you can see that it would be bigger than 50% of all the other lots, so you would not be able to do that administratively. And then conversely, it couldn't be 25% smaller than any of the average of those lots on that block face. That's one example. The next one, we tried to put a lot of examples in this one. So we've got different color stars. Again, the same concept where on the table it shows the lot addresses, the area, and then the width. We didn't show the depth, but we did the calculation for that. And then below it shows the averages. So if you want to start with the purple stars at the top, those could not be combined under this proposed administrative plat or replat because it would be bigger in lot depth, and lot size. Although interestingly enough, the width, if you will, potentially could be allowed, but it would be on all of those categories, width, depth, and lot size to determine. On the two red ones, those actually could be combined because that would meet that criteria and fall within the administrative process. And then the orange ones, those could not be combined because they would not, the depth of the parcels does not meet the average. So, and we can come back to this if you have questions. Just a few more here. Again, back to the criteria. Each parcel would have to have adequate water and sewer facilities and access to a public street. And then if the request is to divide unsubdivided land in an existing PD, each lot resulting from the plat has to be 5 acres or smaller in size. If it was more, then you would have to go through either minor subdivision process. So here's just the graphic of that unplatted. The new lots couldn't be greater than 5 acres in size to be administratively processed. As far as the proposal and outreach, we did post the ordinance on Littleton Plans, and an email was sent out to the community via the Littleton Plans platform. And we did send out an email to developers with the proposed changes. We actually did not receive any written or phone call or any calls before this evening. And also, obviously, we noticed tonight's agenda. And just an FYI, so we're bringing forward tonight Chapter 9 primarily of subdivision. We're calling it kind of phase 1, if you will. And the next part, we want to review the remainder of the subdivision code. And those are all the sections. And this section, or excuse me, this phase would also include establishing transportation engineering design standards. And we expect the time frame to take on this next part would be June to November of this year. So that's just more of a context of what else are we doing relative to the subdivision code. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for staff and the applicant combined?
Yes.
Anyone?
Sure. I had emailed Ms. Mills earlier today with some questions and concerns about the proposed changes, and she provided some really good detailed answers via email, and I'll reiterate some of those for the record. One concern I had is that this change will mean that, well, under the current code, 3 lots could not necessarily be combined into a single lot. And on the particular block I live on has very narrow lots, so most of the homes are already on 2 or 3 lots. So this code would not actually allow me to adjust a lot line between my neighbor and I if, for example, one of our driveways was on the other's property. It would require us to go through a preliminary plat and a final plat, but that's something that could be addressed potentially through the subdivision regulations amendment in the future, so that concern was addressed. I had also wondered if the requirement on easements was carried over from the previous code language.
Yes.
Yeah, because in practice, a savvy developer would likely simply dedicate those easements via separate document and then apply for the administrative plat. So I was curious what we were trying to protect, but it is a carryover from the old code, and so not really a concern.
And I guess I would also add, though, if you were wanting to dedicate easement for right-of-way, that actually is not, you must go through minor or major process to do that, just to clarify.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. And then I had a few technical questions around line 182. There's a discussion on subdivision boundary and whether the code means to say something about lot line in that particular place. Because I would take the boundary of the subdivision to mean the entire perimeter of everything affected by a large subdivision, as opposed to simply adjusting the boundary between 2 lot lines. Then I suppose line 182, there's a quote that says unplatted parcel of land within an existing adjacent subdivision. Wondering if staff would have any concerns about the wording maybe being adjusted to say something like to include platted or unplatted parcel of land adjacent to the property, given that we define adjacency. Generally, I read something that is part of a subdivision as something that's already platted. It's gone through a platting process. But if, the staff interpretation is that, subdivision means any division of land, whether or not approved through the subdivision regulations, then maybe that's not a concern. And those were just my sort of technical questions.
I think they're good questions, and honestly, if you would like us to clarify both of those further, that's more than easy to do.
But Jocelyn, I think the subdivision boundary is truly a subdivision boundary. If you had, there was a slide that you had, Jocelyn, that was the unplatted parcel that was the edge of a subdivision, that one. So that could be adjusting the subdivision boundary to include an unplatted parcel.
Yes, but I think you're saying that we could revise the language to clarify that, is what I understood the question to be, right?
Yes, and I think what I was maybe erroneously pointing out is that if something is within a subdivision, it is by definition platted. Therefore, to say something that's unplatted within an adjacent subdivision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. As I said, technical questions.
Right. And as I said, those are easy to fix, so we can certainly make it more clear.
And also, thank you for the examples on the slides. The illustrations were very helpful in visualizing the types of things that this could approve.
If you make the motion, you might include that item or those items?
I think that at the very least, the one regarding unplatted parcel of land.
Good. I just think this is much needed, and I appreciate that you guys are taking it up.
Thanks, Andrew.
Want to, you're second to last again?
Yeah, sure.
John?
Comment.
I know you guys have worked really hard on this, and I appreciate that. You have done a tremendous amount of work to try to pull together all the things that were going on and make something here that would work with our city, and I thank you for what you've done with that. I do have a few questions. I was curious, so when we're going to line 56 through 60, if you wanted to see that, it talks about the public improvements. And it's not anything with the language there. I just noted that in the other version, you would include what some of those improvements would be, and here you chose not to have them. And I was just curious why.
Generally, that stuff is managed through the zoning code.
So just leave it over for the zoning code, okay? So on line 178 to 180, it's right above what Jason was talking about. You had a slide here that showed that, but I was hoping you could give me something in Littleton that would help me visualize it better.
Sure. Let's see, let me go back to the graphic first so we can make sure I understand what you're saying. So
Yeah.
this is the one, just make sure.
This is it. And I'm trying to visualize it better for how that would work here in Littleton. Where would we see something like that?
Well, we do have various areas of the city that do have sort of remnant, I guess for lack of a better term, and I'm not exactly sure because I wasn't here on some of that historicalness, but of unplatted parcels adjacent to platted subdivision parcels. And the intent was, in those cases, potentially we could still process those administratively as long as they met the code for the applicability and the criteria. So here's just an example of that. If we fast forward to the handout that I gave you, we could use that as an example. And this might be a good one. 2100 West Littleton Boulevard. The lot line to the, what would that be? I guess the west. Unplatted parcel was combined with the bigger parcel to the right through subdivision exemption in the past. So potentially that could still happen is what we're saying, but with the caveat in this particular case of this. So the 2100 West Littleton Boulevard actually would not be able to be processed administratively under these new codes based on this here where the 50% greater.
Thanks, that
section.
helps.
Okay.
That helps a lot. So in lines 232 to 238, this combines a lot of the other version with different things that were kind of more scattered throughout it. But one thing that was left out was the comp plan, and I was just curious why you chose to leave out the comp plan here.
And generally, that is managed under the zoning.
Go back to the zoning. Sounds good to me.
But again, these are all up for consideration.
No, but they're being taken care of otherwise. And I do agree with you, they're being taken care of otherwise. It was just more of a, is that why you did
Got
it?
it, yes.
So you're confirming, you're clarifying. Maybe I should have added, could you clarify? Yeah. So going to lines 239 to 241. Just if you're there, I didn't want to start. It says, each parcel created by the administrative plat or replat is generally consistent with existing character of the block face on which the property is located. I don't like the generally there. I'd just like to leave it out.
Okay.
I mean, if it's consistent, the generally, to me, it leaves it open for a lot more than I think it would be if you just left it with the character of.
Okay.
That's my thought on that. Don't know how other people feel, but I would prefer to leave the word generally out there. That's probably my biggest thing with this. And then when we go to, and you were just talking about this, lines 241 to 247, where you talk about the 50% greater, the 25% smaller, I was curious how you chose those numbers.
Generally, no, I'm just using it. We did try to, well, first I must say that Carol has been an amazing help in this process. I think both of us probably woke up more than once in the middle of the night or in some other manner going, I got it, this is it. So we've had a lot of conversations about this. One of the things that we did aim to do was to look at the giant zoning map in my office, and I'm just going to use this as an example, and we tried to look at neighborhood plans and look at things in that kind of chunks to say, what are the sizes of our existing lots, and what kind of appears would still be in the character of that neighborhood and that block, 50% more and then 25% less. And 100% more, honestly, seemed rather big, and really more than 25% smaller seemed almost too small. So it wasn't any rocket science, but we just tried to look at all the different areas of the city and come up with that.
There was a lot of consternation.
No, I appreciate it. You could tell when you guys were discussing it in the study sessions how much thought you had put into this, and the back and forth between you and the council and working together was impressive, I thought. I'm sorry, I'm almost done. So going to lines 248 and 249. And here, each parcel created by the administrative plat has adequate water and sanitary. And adequate, are you meaning access, or what exactly do you mean by adequate? Where's that defined?
What that means is we require an applicant to provide us what is called will serve letters from our sanitary sewer district as well as Denver Water, since they manage our water, and meaning that they have adequate capacity to serve these properties water and sewer service.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that there won't have to necessarily be changes to the sewer stuff. Like maybe the sewer won't necessarily have the capacity if something more major was built there, but they have access to it in that sense.
More, I would say, phrasing it slightly different, to say that we have adequate capacity, but maybe the pipe that connects this property to the sewer line needs to be upgraded.
Or they would need a new
as well as,
tap or something like that. But they could easily get access to the water from the main line in a road or
That too.
So it's that it is available to serve the site.
Let me break in. So a smaller lot might need a 3/4-inch water line. A larger parcel with more buildings might need a 1-inch or 1.25 inches.
Right, so it would be, that would be some of the technical details as they figure out adequate, but the will serve really also just says that the water, we have capacity to serve that site with our water or with our sewer in the generally in the existing manner.
And the potential changes that would occur, would that be on the person who decided then to develop the land accordingly, or would that be something the city would be dealing with?
You know, I honestly am not sure 100% if it's always on the developer or not, but I can certainly ask Public Works that question.
Yeah, I would just be concerned to not have something that was forced on the city because of administrative change.
Yeah, I guess I meant more in the sense of, generally we have plans about what things we may need to change or update or increase based on what we know our build out to be in the future. So what I meant is, I don't know if someone comes in and says, look, do you have adequate access and capacity? And we say, yeah, but you know what, we've been meaning to upgrade this to X, Y, and Z. I just don't know. Sometimes maybe that city takes that on, or if it's the developer asking for something specific, then in that case, most likely the developer takes that.
But the service lines going into the development and anything serving the structures would be the responsibility of the developer.
Yeah,
but
thanks,
if the main line and the street needed to be expanded, that is typically something the city would do, and it would be in a future project that they would have identified.
That explained it perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And just beneath that, it talks about adequate access to the public street, whereas, and that's 249 to 250, right beneath it. And when you go back to the version that would have been deleted, lines 138, it said about a dedicated, acceptable city street. So this is just adequate access again versus a budding one, and I'm curious for the change of wording here.
Generally, it was just to make it more clear.
How funny. One third's more clear, one person's more confused.
Right. So again, open to if you would like to, add some verbiage to that.
Yeah, it is to be abutted against a street when you say adequate.
Oh, it's also to allow for an access easement if one of the lots needed, some of the lots may need to get a shared access drive or something, and for some reason it may not be directly abutting because you have a driveway that, curves around or, makes an L or something, and so both of the lots, it's to allow for some other options other than have both of them right up against the street. You could have an access easement that could serve both lots.
Okay.
But I think we were thinking, though, that a minimum one of the two lots would be abutting the street. So maybe we need to add that a little bit more.
Just to tweak it, because what you said makes sense to allow the second lot the access, but have at least one of them abutting it. Okay. Oh, you would love it, wouldn't you? Actually, the last one is just really simple. Are there any zoning districts that are not eligible for this procedure?
Any zone districts?
Yeah, we have the different, whether it's industrial, whether it's residential. Are there any of those that would not allow this process to occur?
No.
Okay.
It would just be based on what you were wanting to do within those zone districts and if you qualified making one or two lots.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm done.
Thank you. Bruce?
Jocelyn, I didn't see the study sessions, so back up just a little bit if you would for context. The impetus for this effort and this project is what, if you please?
Yes, good question. Just a minute and I will show you. Primarily, the input was that Chapter 9 of our what we currently have as subdivision exemption is not as clear as we would like it to be.
Well, so you ran through these and I saw that, but what's beyond not being clear, what problem does this activity purporting to solve?
Yeah. So the existing Chapter 9 was written in 1979. That's what we incorporated into our subdivision code. And I'm sorry, you know what, did I bring it? Did I bring my, you know what, I might actually pull up something to show you, and I hadn't thought about this until right now. But one of the things that was really interesting when we started looking into, 1979, other than we know the music was different and some of us were doing other things at that time in our life, like, misbehaving for our children, or our parents rather. But we looked at how has the city changed over time relative to annexation and subdivisions. So when you see that, and I actually might pull it up.
The video?
To show you, we did from 1800 through 19...
Remember, I think you guys showed us that
right.
in one of our study sessions.
Right.
So now that you say that, I recall the conversation,
And,
but I'm still not.
Yeah, no, so I may be taking too long, but what I'm trying to explain to you is, so what we could see over that time is when we wrote the subdivision code and the subdivision exemption, we were really in the middle of having a lot of unplatted property in the city, annexing it in and creating big subdivisions.
Okay.
And so fast forward from 80s to today, the manner in which people come now with a need of some sort of creation of lots or re-subdividing things is more in this minor arena. So it's lot line adjustments, it's all this small stuff. Unplatted property into one or two lots, lot line adjustment,
right,
a boundary adjustment. And currently in our existing code, we don't clearly lay out a process specifically for these things. We've been lumping them into subdivision exemption, but the intent here really is to be very specific and lay out specifically a process for all these more minor administrative platting.
But if they're minor administrative platting kinds of things and what have you been doing with them to date?
We've been using that Chapter 9, but it's not been as well transparent or as clearly laid out in that chapter. So we're wanting to make it more robust to explain all of these
Clearly laid out
options.
for whom? Because, I mean, if you guys come in and somebody wants to do something that, I'm not sure which example to use, but if it's been handled in an administrative fashion and now you're saying it has to go through a minor plat, or vice versa, how many of these do we do in any given time period? I mean, in the course of a year, are there 100 of these or 2 of these?
Subdivision exemption, generally, we just look back a few years. We haven't been doing that many, I'd say a handful each year. 2015, 5, 2014, 2, 2016, 9, and so far this year, 6. But really, like any part of our code, the amendments that we're proposing tonight really are helpful for staff when applicants come in. They're really helpful for applicants, so we really can clearly understand what process they need to move forward with, as well as the community. And then the other thing, and I was trying to provide context, like this is just the first part. We're just looking primarily at Chapter 9. But to your point, we really want to look at, and to Jason's point too, we want to look at the entire Title 11, all of our subdivision. And so that's kind of the next phase that we want to bring forward, because we do think that there probably are some other, I guess I don't want to jump the gun, but potentially there are other places that have like a minor subdivision, if you will, that is preliminary and final plat combined together, and that moves forward. So probably just above the threshold, if you will, of Chapter 9, the really administrative things, there's probably another category that we just haven't identified yet because we haven't taken on the rest of the review of the code.
All right. I mean, okay, that's fine. A couple of specific questions. On lines 58 and 59, subdivider may be required to enter into a subdivision improvement agreement. What is a subdivision improvement agreement other than the obvious? I mean, have we ever done one of these with someone?
Do we do these?
Yeah.
Oh, we do them all the time. Yes.
So when we did the condos behind Walgreens off of Bellevue over there, did they have a subdivision improvement agreement?
They will be working that
Part of
through.
what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Those are for all the public improvements, so sidewalk, drainage easements, drainage improvements.
But it's an administrative function that goes on today as an administrative function, right?
Yes, but council does approve the subdivision exemption, subdivision improvement
At final
agreements.
plat.
All right, so 69 through 72, no owner or agent of the owner of any land shall transfer, sell, agree to sell, or offer to sell, any land before a plat for such land has been approved in accordance with the provision of this title. Mechanically, how can you prevent somebody from agreeing to sell or offering to sell a parcel that may or may not have a plat on it?
This is actually state statute as well.
Right, but you're correct. We do have some folks that have just gone down to the county and recorded something. So if that happens, it happens. And then if they want to actually build something on it, then they have to come to the city and we can clean all that up at that point.
Okay. Why can't you do dedication of public right-of-way as an administrative plat? It's got to go through a minor plat, and what is the process for minor? It has to come to us?
Yes, so preliminary plat comes to Planning Commission and final plat has to go to City Council. And generally, because it's right-of-way, it has to be approved by City Council. So that's why you can't do it administratively.
Okay. And that's pretty much the way it works today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Merger of lots may be merged with. All right. On 232 through 238, which I think has come up already. each parcel's created by the administrative plat or replat complies with minimum requirements. So what do you do today that is different from what this is stipulating?
This actually is what we do today. Some of the mechanics of how we're proposing this was in the ordinance, we're saying we're repealing Chapter 9 because it seemed easier and replacing it with this, but it's not that we took everything out of the existing Chapter 9, because you do need to make sure that any administrative, whether it's subdivision exemption or this, that you're reviewing it and that it meets the zoning requirements for that.
So would it be ultimately a fair summarization of all of this to basically say what you're trying to do with this new code verbiage is to more or less accurately represent what you are in fact doing today versus maybe what you're sort of doing it anyway and you're just actually writing it out now the way you're doing it as opposed to more or less what was there from 40 years ago?
Generally, yes.
All right. Okay.
And the only clarification in that is that we are specifying in that line that multiple zone districts cannot be contained within one administrative plat or replat. That's a new, I mean, it's what we're doing now, just like to your point.
Yeah.
But we're just clarifying that that's different than what is currently in the code right now.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
So before we get any more, you guys want to see this super cool, like the history of Littleton in 5 seconds or less?
Please.
Relative to, it's really an amazing thing, I think. Maybe that's why we're in planning, because we love this stuff. And this is with GIS, and Eric Irvin helped put this together. But what it is the blue is our existing boundary. The red hashed is the subdivided property, and then the yellow is all the unplatted. And also in the city boundary, the yellow. So that's 1899, 1909. Isn't this so cool? Look at that. You can see 70s, 80s, we were doing a lot of subdivisions and over time. Whoops, that's it.
Well, built out. Okay.
There you go.
You'll
That's
miss
it
it,
today.
right?
That's generally today. So
My questions will be very quick. Let's see, 69 to 72, say if Joe Citizen comes in and he's getting ready to sell his house, he looks at this and, oh my God, I got to do a plat. I assume that's not the case. He's in the wrong section. You sell your house and your property and move on, correct?
do whatever you want to do. The only way we're going to really need you to work through these regulations is if you want to build something or do combined property to, mostly it will be centered around development is how these applications come before us. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Rarely do people come to say, hey, can I subdivide my property because I want to sell it? Generally, people already have subdivided properties.
Already subdivided, okay. Scroll down here, I'm sorry.
Oh, nice.
There somewhere. Line 231, I'll read it. Administrative plat shall be approved only if the director determines that the following criteria have been met. And I was thinking that maybe after the word that all of the following criteria have been met. Is it implied by the sentence as is, or would that be something decent to slip in there?
Sure.
Okay.
Add it.
Yeah, it just, that means you have to meet all of the, the 5 criteria, I think it is. Last question. Let's see, 239 to 245. Let me give you, for instance, let's say you're in Shady Croft, you want to subdivide your lot into 2. Your near neighbor, maybe he was grandfathered in, and he has a smaller lot that's the standard of the zoning district. But he subdivides that lot, and that's that 25% smaller lot is smaller than the district standard. I assume that can't happen then. It would have to go it can't be done administratively, you have to go through another process. Because he
Correct.
doesn't
That's
meet he doesn't meet the underlying zoning of, let's say, Shady Croft that requires like 1 acre lots or something.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. That's all my questions. Anyone else have anything? Yes, we have a lot of perhaps minor little additions. I don't know how they get in, other than doing amendments or the main motion. So do we have a motion? Oh, excuse me.
Excuse me, I would just, can I just say you can do the main motion with conditions instead of amending?
Right. And I'm sorry, I'm slipping ahead here. We now come to the public portion. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the matter? We have one person in the audience. Do you wish to speak? Can you have 3 minutes?
I'm going to ask for the illustration that shows the rights of way, though. Jocelyn, do you have the paper copy of the things you showed? You know, what Jocelyn showed is in the packet. Which one? It's the one that shows the grove.
That is one that was the handout.
Oh, that one. Okay. Oh, thank you. I'm going to let you do it.
Better than the other one, though.
Thank you. Although,
Not that one?
this is the other one, is that?
I wrote on the other. Okay. Really clear. No.
Great. So this is, does anybody have a pointer or a pen?
Pen? Pam, do you want a pen? Oh.
This is where the grove is. This is the railroad depression and the railroad right-of-way, which was unplatted. The developer of the grove avoided public process in 3 ways. They didn't do the B2 rezoning or the R3 rezoning in this lot or that. And they also didn't plat the railroad right-of-way. They submitted a subdivision exemption so that the platting could be done administratively in here. Now, they weren't dividing anything, they were combining parcels under a subdivision chapter, and they asked for an exemption because it's an administrative process. So that's why we're looking at this, because some people brought that up and would not let it die. This is one of the ways that the Grove avoided public process, in my opinion. But perhaps in fact. And the other one here, the R3 parcel, was called not a part, even though an industrial fire lane is on a residentially zoned parcel. So my comment about this is we're far down the road from having a lot of unplatted property, but where we have it now, it's in RUB zones. I think you say, Mr. Rednicki, that these are RUB zones. And so now that we're tight together, it's more important than ever that we pay attention to planning. To me, the default should be no admin process. It's all public process. We all get to see these and understand what they are and evaluate them. This is a precautionary principle so that we try this out. If there's only a few cases in a year, let's see what they are, let's test them out, and then let's codify that. To me, this way of kind of saying, well, we looked at it and we estimated and we think this deals with certain things that we looked at is, frightens me totally. There are other cities that have gone through this. There's not one, there's not 5, there's not 100, there's thousands of cities that have gone through this. So there's other code that we could look at and use. But to me, there's potential harm. And in this case, I don't think that the avoiding of public process in the Grove helped Littleton. In 2013, we required public process for the Grove. Somehow in 2015, we didn't. And that's not good for the city. So I don't think that this has been fully explored. I think there are few enough cases that we really ought to do them more publicly instead of trying to avoid them. No case has been made for the need for more administrative approval. So I ask you to take more time, figure this out, understand the implications and impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the audience that might want to come down and speak, we'll close the public portion. So, do we have a...
I can attempt one.
Yes.
I tried taking notes during the discussion, and we'll see if I captured everything. Okay. I move to approve PC Resolution 05-2017, an ordinance to amend Title 11, Subdivision Purpose, Subdivision Definitions, and Chapter 9, Subdivision Exemption, which forwards a favorable recommendation to City Council with the following conditions. 1. Revise the sentence in line 181 to state a request to adjust a platted subdivision boundary to include an unplatted parcel of land adjacent to the property. 2. Eliminate the word generally in line 240. 3. In line 231, require that all of the criteria be met. And I'd ask for a second.
Second.
Good.
There was one other that we had a conditional change with.
You might ask if he would amend his motion or do an amendment.
Would you consider amending it if I tell you what it is and then you can decide?
Certainly, I can hear what it is.
So this was back on 249 to 250 where it talked about adequate public streets, being adequate access to public streets. And then the conversation with Jocelyn and Carol was to say one needed to abut the property. The street had to abut one piece of property, but then left it open for the easement for the other. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am, that summarizes what we spoke about, yes. Is that?
There might be a simpler way of saying it.
We might, yeah, maybe, or make it, yeah, a little more cohesive, but we could work on it.
And if staff feels that's clear enough direction, I can accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yes, staff can work with that.
We're making notes.
And I'd ask for a second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Looks to be none. I have nothing. With that, we vote.
All right, the vote's unanimous and the motion carries.
Thank you. We now have director staff comments. Anything?
Just want to thank everyone who's able to come to the first annual Boards, Authorities, and Commissions Symposium. Thank you very much. I thought it was a very good training and reminder for those who've been on the board for a while, or commission rather, on running meetings and as well as the legal training. So thank you guys very much. And we'll be sending out the tentative calendar here shortly. Oh, and then the second thing, I guess, is that if you hadn't already seen the press release, we do have a new city attorney, and he starts July 1st, Stephen Kemp, coming from Peoria, Arizona.
Do we have a meeting 2 weeks from now? Have anything on the agenda?
I believe it's coming in as a study session.
I'm sorry, it's what?
Study session? I do not believe we have a hearing item.
Okay.
Hearing case, rather.
And do you know what the study session will be about?
Working on that topic right now.
Okay.
I guess I would offer that, if you probably already know also, that City Council will be having a retreat this Friday. And so they're coming up with some priorities. And so I expect to have some update for you at our next meeting relative to that, if nothing, and maybe a couple other training type items that we're thinking about.
Okay. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.